I was walking my dogs when I felt this loud noise and a sharp pain. Short moments after, it seemed that I had died. I left my human body, and I think I went to heaven. It is hard to describe what was there. No pain, no grief, just your soul, the spark from your creator.
Some people die, but they come back to share their stories of what lies ahead of all of us. This is Jane's story.
It was one of those crisp Alaskan mornings, the kind that makes you feel alive just breathing in the air. The sky was that perfect shade of blue, stretching wide and open above me, and everything seemed so still and peaceful. I was out walking my dogs like I always did, taking our usual path through the edge of town. We lived in a small community where everyone knew each other. This walk was something I looked forward to every day. It was my time to clear my head, let the dogs explore, and just take in the quiet beauty around me. The dogs were happy, noses down, picking up every scent along the way. I remember how their tails wagged with excitement, completely in their own world. It felt like any other day, nothing unusual. I wasn't thinking about anything in particular, just the sound of my footsteps on the gravel path and the way the air felt cool against my face. Then, out of nowhere, there was this loud, sharp sound. It was like a pop, almost like the sound of someone chopping wood or a car backfiring in the distance. I didn't realize what it was at first. For a second, everything seemed to pause. I remember standing there, frozen, trying to make sense of it. The dogs even stopped, ears perked up, confused. That's when I felt something hit me. At first, it didn't hurt. It was more like a punch, like the wind was knocked out of me. My first thought was that I'd tripped or stumbled. But then I realized I couldn't catch my breath. I looked down, and that's when I saw it. I was bleeding, but it didn't make sense. My mind couldn't process what had just happened. How could this happen here in my quiet little town, on my peaceful morning walk? Everything felt unreal after that, like I was watching it happen to someone else. My legs felt weak, and before I knew it, I was on the ground. I remember the feel of the cold gravel under my hands, the way the dogs were pulling at their leashes, not understanding why I had stopped. They were still so full of energy, so unaware of what had just happened. There was this guy in a hood that came in a flash and took my purse. The dogs reacted. They quickly came near me and made the guy run. They did not chase him. They started sniffing and poking me with their noses. Somehow, they knew something terribly bad happened to me. After a few moments, people started to gather around me. I couldn't see their faces clearly, but I could hear their voices, panicked and urgent. Someone was shouting for help, and others were trying to comfort me, telling me to hang on, that help was on the way. I wanted to tell them I was okay, that I just needed a moment, but my words wouldn't come out. It was like my body had stopped listening to me. I remember being aware of the weight of my body, how heavy everything felt. The world around me was still moving. People rushing around, but I felt like I was in slow motion, like I was disconnected from it all. I could hear the distant wail of an ambulance, but it felt far away, almost like a sound carried on the wind from another place. The next thing I remember is being lifted into the ambulance. The motion of it jostled me, but it wasn't painful anymore. It was just strange, like I was there, but not really. I was aware of the paramedics working around me, talking to each other in those calm, practiced voices, but the words didn't matter. I felt strangely at peace, almost like I was floating. I thought about my family then. My mind kept going to them, even though I wasn't sure why. I knew I should be scared, but there was a strange calm settling over me. Maybe it was shock, or maybe it was something else, but I just felt like I was drifting further and further away from everything. When we got to the hospital, everything moved so fast. The bright lights, the sound of machines beeping, doctors and nurses moving around me in a blur. They were all focused, talking quickly, making decisions. I could hear them discussing what to do next, but their voices seemed to blend together. It was like I was there, but already on the outside, watching it happen from a distance. I wanted to stay awake, to hold on, but it felt like I was slipping. The last thing I remember before it all went dark was someone squeezing my hand, telling me to stay with them, to keep fighting. But I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't in pain. I just let go. When everything went dark, I expected to feel nothing. I thought that was the end. I had let go, and the world faded, but what happened next wasn't what I expected at all. Instead of nothingness, there was a light, soft at first, but getting brighter and brighter. It wasn't harsh or blinding, though. It felt warm, comforting, like the light was wrapping itself around me. I didn't feel my body anymore. The pain, the heaviness, it was all gone. There was just this sense of floating, like I was weightless. I didn't know where I was or how I got there, but none of that seemed to matter. There was this overwhelming feeling of peace, like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. It's hard to explain, but it felt like everything that had ever hurt or scared me just melted away. It was like I had been carrying this invisible weight my whole life, and suddenly it was lifted. I started moving, though I wasn't walking. It was more like I was being pulled gently towards the light, but I didn't resist. It was like stepping into pure love. Not any kind of love. It was a love that almost made you cry in joy. The closer I got, the warmer and brighter it became. It wasn't just a light, it felt alive. And then, just ahead of me, I saw the river. It wasn't like any river I'd ever seen before. It wasn't made of water. It was made of something else, something I can only describe as knowledge. It shimmered and sparkled, not with sunlight, but with a kind of glow from within. It felt like the river held every answer to every question I had ever had, and all I had to do was touch it. There was no fear, no hesitation. I was drawn to it, like I had been searching for this place my entire life without even knowing it. I drifted closer to the river, and as I did, I started to feel a deep sense of joy, the kind that fills you up from the inside. I felt like a little kid again, discovering something new and magical. I don't know how long I stayed there, but time didn't seem to work the same way in that place. I didn't think about where I had come from, or how I had gotten there. I didn't even think about my body, or the fact that I had been lying on an operating table just moments before. All of that seemed so far away, like it belonged to another life. I knelt by the edge of the river, and the moment I touched it, something incredible happened. It was like everything I had ever wondered about was suddenly answered. Questions I didn't even know I had were just there, clear and complete. The river flowed with knowledge, and as I played in it, I realized that everything I had ever wanted to understand was within my reach. It was all so effortless, so simple. I felt like I was part of something much larger, like I had stepped into a place where everything just made sense. But it wasn't just about knowledge. It was about joy. I can't explain it fully, but I remember feeling so happy, so free. There was nothing to worry about, nothing to fear. I was just there, existing in this perfect place, with all the answers flowing around me like a gentle current. As I stood in the river, I started to notice figures on the far shore. They weren't clear at first, more like shadows in the distance, but I knew they were there. And as I focused on them, I recognized them. It was my family. Not just the family I have now, but all of them. People I knew had passed on, people I had loved. And not just people. There were animals too. My dogs, pets from when I was little, even animals I hadn't thought about in years. They were waiting for me. I don't know how I knew, but I just did. They were standing there, not calling to me or rushing me, but just waiting. There was this deep sense of understanding that they were there for me whenever I was ready, but they didn't need to tell me anything. I could feel it. They were happy, and they would wait as long as I needed. I wanted to go to them. The thought crossed my mind as I stood by the river, but something kept me there in the water. I wasn't ready to leave just yet. The river was so beautiful, so full of everything I had ever wanted to know, and I couldn't pull myself away from it. I knew, without anyone telling me, that I had all the time in the world. My family wasn't going anywhere. They would wait, and I could stay in the river as long as I wanted. I don't know how long I stayed there. Time didn't matter. Nothing did, except that feeling of completeness of being exactly where I needed to be. But then something happened. I sensed it before I saw it. A presence. It was gentle at first, almost like a soft breeze, but it grew stronger, more distinct. I wasn't scared, though. There was no fear in this place, only calm and love. Whatever it wasn't threatening. In fact, it felt the opposite. It felt welcoming, like I had been waiting for this presence without even knowing it. Then I saw it, a figure coming toward me. I can't describe exactly what it looked like, because it wasn't like anything I had ever seen before. It wasn't a person, not in the way we think of people, but it had a form. It glowed with a light that was brighter than anything I had ever seen. Yet it didn't hurt my eyes. It was pure, radiant, and it seemed to pulse with something more than light. It pulsed with love. This love, it wasn't like any love I had known on earth. It wasn't even like the love I felt from my family, though that love is deep and true. This love was beyond any of that. It was unconditional, all-encompassing, and it filled every part of me. It was like standing in the sun, but instead of warmth, it was love pouring over me, through me. There was nothing else. In the presence of this being, everything else faded away. I forgot about the river, the distant figures on the shore, even myself. All that existed was this being and its love. As it came closer, the love grew stronger, more intense. It was so powerful that it felt like everything else was shrinking away. I couldn't think of anything else. I didn't want to think of anything else. I wanted to stay in that love forever. It was like every pain, every sadness I had ever felt in my life was gone, completely erased by this feeling of love. It was overwhelming, but in the best way possible. The being didn't speak, not at first. It didn't need to. Everything I needed to know was already there, in the way it radiated love. But eventually, I felt it communicate with me, not with words exactly, but in a way that I could understand perfectly. It was like the thoughts were placed directly into my mind, as clear as anything I had ever heard. "It's not your time," the being told me in that wordless way. I remember being confused at first, because I didn't want to leave. How could I? This place, this love, why would I want to go back to where I had come from? I had never felt so complete, so at peace. I couldn't imagine returning to the world, to my body, to pain and worry and everything that comes with being alive. I shook my head, almost like a child refusing to leave the playground. "I don't want to go," I said. Though I didn't speak out loud. It was more like a thought, a feeling I projected to the being. I didn't want to leave this place, not when I was so close to the shore where my family waited, not when I had just discovered this river of knowledge, this joy, and especially not when I was standing in the presence of this being of pure, radiant love. The being didn't seem upset by my response. It was patient, understanding. The love didn't lessen or fade. If anything, it became stronger, wrapping around me even more fully, as if to comfort me, to let me know that it understood. But the message was the same. It wasn't my time. I felt torn. On one hand, I wanted to stay more than anything. I had never felt anything like this love before, and the thought of leaving it behind was unbearable. But on the other hand, there was a strange sense of knowing, a sense that the being was right. It wasn't my time. There was something I still had to do. I didn't know what it was, but I could feel it in my bones, in my soul. My time here wasn't over, but neither was my time back in the world I had come from. I looked toward the shore again, where my family and animals waited. They were still there, still patient. There was no urgency in them, no calling me to come closer. They were content to wait for me, however long it took. And in that moment, I realized something. I would see them again. I wasn't leaving them behind forever. They would be there when I returned, just as they had been there now. That thought brought me a strange kind of peace, knowing that I would be with them again. But it wasn't time for that yet. The being of love moved closer, and I felt a deep, deep sense of purpose settle over me. It was as if, in its presence, everything about my life, about why I had to return, made sense. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't even know the specific reason I had to go back, but I knew it was important. I had something to do, something I needed to finish. And as much as I didn't want to leave this place, I couldn't ignore that purpose. With great reluctance, I accepted it. I felt that purpose, that reason pulling me back toward life, toward my body. The being didn't force me. It didn't push me away. It was more like an invitation, a gentle nudge, reminding me that I still had something left to do. And with that, the light around the being began to soften, and I felt myself starting to move away from it, slowly, gently. The love didn't fade. It stayed with me, even as the light began to dim. I remember feeling one last burst of joy, one last wave of that incredible love, before everything around me began to shift. The river, the shore, the light, they all started to blur, like a dream slowly fading. But the love stayed with me, even as the scene disappeared. I could still feel it in my chest, in my heart, even as I drifted away from the bright light and back toward the world I had come from. And then, just like that, I was pulled back. When I came back, it wasn't like waking up from a deep sleep. It wasn't gradual or gentle. It was like I was suddenly pulled back into my body, back into the world, and everything hit me at once. The sounds, the lights, the feeling of being alive again. But it felt strange, like I didn't quite fit into myself anymore. My body felt heavy and foreign, like I was wearing a suit that didn't belong to me. I was back, but part of me was still clinging to where I had just been. The first thing I heard was the doctors' voices. They were still working, still focused, like they had been the whole time. I could hear the beeping of machines, the soft hum of the hospital around me. For a moment, I wasn't sure where I was. Everything felt distant, like I was seeing the world from behind a thick curtain. But then it started to come back to me. I was in the hospital, lying on the operating table. I had been shot, and they were trying to save me. But something was different now. I wasn't afraid. Before, I had been in pain, terrified of what was happening to me. But now, all I felt was calm. It wasn't the same as the overwhelming peace I had felt in the light, but it was close. I knew I wasn't going to stay here forever, but I wasn't scared of that anymore. I had seen what was waiting for me on the other side, and it was beautiful. It was more than beautiful. It was everything. The doctors didn't know that I had been gone, that I had seen what I had seen. To them, I had just been unconscious, teetering on the edge between life and death. But to me, it was so much more than that. I had crossed that line, if only for a short time, and I had come back with a new understanding of life, of what it meant to be alive. As they worked on me, patching up the damage, I felt a strange sense of gratitude. Not just to the doctors, though of course I was grateful for them, but for life itself, for the chance to come back, even if it was just for a little while. I knew that my time here wasn't long. That was made clear to me by the doctors later. They told me that they had repaired my artery, but the graft was fragile. It wouldn't last forever, maybe not even long enough for me to see another year. I could die at any moment, they said, without warning. They told me I should be prepared for that I should live carefully, knowing that death could be around the corner. But I didn't see it that way. To me, the fact that I had come back at all was a gift. Every breath I took now felt like a blessing, a reminder that life wasn't something to be feared, but something to be cherished. I wasn't scared of dying anymore, because I knew what waited for me when it happened. I had seen it, felt it, and it was more real than anything I had ever experienced here on Earth. When I finally opened my eyes, the doctors were there, looking relieved. They had saved me, pulled me back from the edge. I smiled at them, but it wasn't just a smile of relief or gratitude. It was a smile of knowing. They didn't realize what I had been through, what I had seen, and I didn't try to explain it to them. I wasn't sure they would understand, and that was okay. It wasn't for them to understand. It was something I carried inside me now, something that would shape the rest of my life. Thought in the days and weeks that followed, I started to heal. Physically, at least. My body was weak, fragile, but my spirit felt stronger than ever. I had been given a second chance, a chance to live again, even if it was just for a short while. Living with the knowledge that I could die at any moment didn't scare me. In fact, it was the opposite. It made me feel more alive than I had ever felt before. Every day felt like a gift, like a bonus round in a game where I already knew the final outcome. I started to pay attention to the little things, the way the sun felt on my skin, the way the wind sounded in the trees, the laughter of my friends and family. All of it seemed more vibrant, more real than it had before. And yet, at the same time, I felt a strange sense of distance from it all. It was like I was living in two worlds, this one and the one I had glimpsed beyond the light. I carried that other world with me, always. The love I had felt, the peace, the knowledge that everything was exactly as it should be. It was always there, in the back of my mind, guiding me, reminding me not to get caught up in the small worries of this life. People asked me how I wasn't afraid, how I could live with the knowledge that my life could end at any moment. They expected me to be scared, anxious, to live in fear of what was to come. But I wasn't. I would smile and tell them that I had seen what was waiting for me, and that it was beautiful. I would tell them that life was meant to be lived, not feared. And when the time came for me to leave this world, I knew I would be ready. I had seen the river. I had felt the love. And I knew without a doubt that it was waiting for me whenever my time came. Till then, I would live with purpose, with joy, knowing that every moment was precious and that death was not an end, but a return to that place of endless love and peace.